How does it work? Because look, I'm a 46-year-old, profoundly uncool individual, so I now worry about addressing you as Mr. B, Plan B, Mr. Drew, Ben. How should I address you?
Ben's fine.
Is it?
Yeah.
So where did Plan B come from then? Let's start with that.
When you get into the rap game, you need a rap name. And, as a kid, you go through a lot of stupid things that have nothing to do with who you are.
Sure.
You know? So I went through a lot of those stupid names.
Which ones did you reject?
We won't get into that. But, it got to the point where I wrote Kids off my first album. That was the first ever rap song that I created. I'd been MCing before that, and I'd been writing lyrics to garage music. But the first time I ever actually sat down and changed the tempo to a hip-hop tempo and wrote a rap song, the first thing that came out of me was Kids. And it suddenly, it went from being something that I kind of enjoyed doing and a side thing that I'd done because I was songwriting before that. Taught myself how to play guitar at 14. And was fortunate to have someone in my life that taught me how to structure songs and taught me what music to listen to. I actually learned how to write songs from Tracks of My Tears, Smokey Robinson.
It's not a bad starting point.
My godfather said that's like the I think he called it the first ever pop song because he said the way in which it was structured. He said this is where all classic pop song structure all kind of derives from this song. I don't know if he's correct about that, but that's how he put it to me. So he taught me that song, and it's basically the formula of verse, chorus, mid-late chorus. And he taught me the importance of a middle-eight, etc. And so I was writing songs. As soon as I learnt that, I was like prolifically writing songs and finishing them.
In that classic...
in that song structure,
People think Strickland Banks was a departure, but actually Strickland Banks was like going back to what you were doing before the first album.
Yeah, it was the first thing. So then I wrote Kids. And by the way, at this point, I was never a trained singer, so I would write songs and I'd have to get my friends to tune the guitar. And some of them would tune it by ear. So the key of the guitar would drop from standard tuning and it would drop down to like E flat, B. Depending on who came round, they'd play the first note and they'd tune it by ear. So I'd write a song and then I'd be singing it comfortably and everything. Then someone would come around with a proper guitar tuner and properly tune the guitar to E. And I'd go, right, I can finally play you this song I've written. I'd play the song and I wouldn't be able to sing it. It'd be really kind of hard, on my throat. And
sure.
I was like, I'm obviously not cut out for this.
That was why you thought you didn't have...
Yeah, I thought, well, I'm a good songwriter, but I'm a very temperamental singer. Like some days I can sing, some days I can't. I had no idea it was to do with the tuning of the guitar, right?
Seriously?
Yeah, so...
How old were you at this point? About 18, 19 or a bit younger?
I can't remember, man.
Sure.
I mean, 16, 17. I can't remember when I wrote Kids.
And no one else noticed? No one said, mate, you just need to keep your guitar tuned to the same pitch?
They just said you got to practice. It's just you got to practice, build your vocal cords, their muscles. You just got to do it every day and all that.
Oh, okay.
And I even had, later on, I even did have a couple lessons. And it still didn't work. But anyway, going back.
Back to Plan B.
Going back, right? When I wrote Kids, I realised that I was a rapper. I couldn't believe that I'd written that song and it was so on point, and there wasn't a lyric that I was uncomfortable with or I felt that needed to be rewritten. I was just like, I need to take this seriously now, which means I need to take myself seriously and I need like a proper name. And so, I'm going through names and I'm thinking, all my friends call me B. My name's Ben, and for short they call me B, and I just feel like if I'm going to have a name, it should have a B in it so that my friends don't feel like they have to call me by this new stage name. They can still call me B, but even in the act of calling me B, they'd still be calling me by my stage name.
I get it.
And then, one night I just was just going through a list of, names that have B in it, and I came across Plan B. I just kind of sat up in my bed and went, that's the one. And it was, for me, it was fitting because obviously I'd started off as a singer-songwriter, you know, and I'd made that decision that I'm not a good enough singer, so I'll carry on writing songs behind the scenes, but in public I'll be known as a rapper. And so Plan B felt...
It's right on every level.
Yeah, it was fitting because like the Plan A kind of failed, and actually...
Although on the first album, you do let loose a couple of times, don't you? You can hear the soul and the R&B.
Yeah, but in a studio environment, I was able to get enough takes out of me, and, you can tune things and stuff and, get stuff sounding nice, right. Get some female backing singers to back it up, thicken it up a bit.
Sure.
The thing is, when we came to doing it live, I struggled. To sing the choruses and stuff how I wanted. And for years, a good couple years, I was performing like that. Because, I guess ultimately, that's why I call myself Plan B, because I felt like the Plan A had failed. But then there was influences in my life at the time that knew I could sing and was like, look, if you're going to do this rap thing, you've still got to sing. Sure. There's no point getting like a singer to come to the gigs when you can do it yourself. So I decided to limit the amount I was singing and just sing on choruses. But then through performing the songs and really, like, I was always confident when I was rapping, and when I was singing, I just felt really naked. I just said to the band, I said, look, I'm just going to stop singing. I'm going to get a singer to come and sing the choruses. And the drummer went, why don't you just tune the guitar down? I said, what do you mean? He goes, just tune the guitar down to the key below.
So he knew?
He knew, but he'd been working with me for years, and... I'd been banging on about how...
He probably thought it was your artistic temperament or something like that, Perhaps, he didn't want to interfere.
Yeah, in the end, it was like, what I now know is like the simplest kind of solution.
And as soon as that happened, it's like flicking a switch. You found your voice.
So I got the tuner out, but I obviously, I knew which string was what,
Yeah.
Like E, D, G, in standard tuning. But then when you drop it, it changes, so somebody had to help me get it into the key.
Okay. So what would have happened?
And then I just played it, and I went, "Is that better?" I went, "Yeah, that's better." I said, "Can we go lower?" I went, "Yeah, of course you can, mate." Then I tuned it down one more, and then suddenly this voice come out of me.
Seriously?
I couldn't believe it. I was like, "This has been my problem the whole time." So then when it came to the next album, now I was just like, there was no hang-ups. I was like, yeah, if I'm going to sing, I'm going to sing. And,
so when you said you felt naked singing, it wasn't a confidence issue in the simplest sense of the word. You were just worried that you were going to balls it up, or you were worried that something was going to go wrong.
It was
so
like
exposed.
It was a physical issue. It was like in my head, I can sing it. Some days when I walk around the house, I sing it and it's fine.
Yes.
But whenever you lot put music to it, it's a problem. You know. And obviously, when I was walking around my house singing naturally, I would just sing in the right key, right?
Yeah.
But it's mad. It's one of them things where when you're not trained, you're completely untrained. Like, it's just one of them
things. So you have to find your way. It's like groping around in the dark, and then with your drummer in your ear, he gives you the... Well, so what would have happened if... I mean, there wouldn't have been Who Needs Actions when you got words then?
There wouldn't have been Strickland Banks.
No, I'm not going to... I'd have seen it the other way around. Because if you'd had that guitar tuning moment years previous...
Oh, right, yeah.
What would happen?
All right. Yeah. For real. Or if I'd never have had it.
Yeah. Well, then you'd have carried on rapping and not singing. But I wonder whether, because the first album is so raw, referencing everything from your mum's love life through to the death of Damilola Taylor, that kind of needed to be rapped, didn't it? In 2006?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about this new album. This new album, like, everyone's saying, oh, there's no rap on it. I'm like the context of this album, what it's about, it just doesn't feel right for me to rap on it.
Sure.
Because of the way in which I rap. When I rap, like, I don't think you'll ever hear me do like a pop rap records. Like, I'm from that old school hip hop school of thought where it should be about your environment, and it should be like, like a town crier talking about like the politics of the day and not being afraid to get as gritty as you need to be, you know. I just feel like there's a side of me that is already sweet and soft, and that's better served with my singing voice. And there's a side of me that can get really kind of pissed off and angry and want people to listen, and that's the kind of rap side. Although I do feel like with Guess Again, I struck a kind of
balance between the two.
Yeah.
This is like the sweet and soft side. How often did you show that when you were growing up in Forest Gate? How many people would see your sweet and soft side as a
I wasn't afraid to show it at all. I mean, I had a lot of support from friends actually. When I the first soul song I ever wrote seriously, I was so impressed with it. I brought it to the PRU I was at, and I sung it to my friends, and my friends were proper hood, you know. And I never felt like that would be an issue to play it to them, because we was all into music, and not just hip hop music. We were just into music in general. So I don't think I ever felt like that was a thing. I think before that, when I wrote kind of joke songs that weren't really about anything, or which usually actually I wrote joke songs, songs that would make people laugh, because I thought if I sing a song now and it's serious, I'm going to be really nervous, and if I don't sing it well, it's going to be really awkward. So if I make the song a joke song, everyone will get over the fact that a man is singing to them right now, or a boy, is singing to another boy.
Sure.
So I started like that, and that's how I built my confidence, and that allowed me to sing in front of my friends. And then at some point, it just became serious. I had an experience with a girl, and then I wrote this song, and then I was really impressed with it. I brought it into my PRU, and I played it to my friends, and they was like, "Do you know what? That's sick. Like, that's sick, and you need to play it to this guy I know." So that same day, they made me take my guitar down to this place called, I think it was called Western Spirit. It's somewhere in Plaistow or Canning Town, and you had to go there if you got caught by the police. Rather than get charged, they would put you on caution so long as you went and done a program at this after-school place called Western Spirit. And it was there that I met the guy that was running it, called Clifton, and my friend said, play it to him. So I played it to him. He went, wait there, called up his cousin, said, play it down the phone. And I played it down the phone, and the next thing you know, his cousin's managing me, and his cousin had a studio up in Chalk Farm, and it was a studio where they got like loads of other youngsters to come. And basically, that's where I met people like Ed Skrine, Naomi Gray,
So you're on your way.
Amir Moore from Rudimental. We all kind of met there at that spot,
We've jumped ahead. I want to take you back a bit, Ben, if I may. What were you like at school?
I was very capable.
There's a butt coming.
Yeah, there's always a but.
There's always a but.
No, I was very capable and intelligent enough to have got my GCSEs, but I think that my home environment and the things that was happening in my home environment just kind of made that impossible, When you go to school in London, and, I was the minority in my school, and I had to be tough because of that,
Minority because you were white?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no solidarity between the white kids in the school, not the kind of solidarity that the black and Asian kids had. So it was you had to be tough and stand on your own 2 feet, which meant I got into a lot of fights. And in some ways, the stuff that was happening in my home environment prepared me for that. Albeit the stuff that was happening in my home environment also, like I said, made it really impossible for me to learn. The aggression and violence that I experienced at home basically put me into a position where I wasn't going to take shit from people at school, which means I wasn't going to be bullied, but then I couldn't learn because I was forever getting suspended or kicked out of class because I would stand up and fight people in the class.
Because that was the personality you'd had to develop to survive at home. It sounds like you coiled yourself up so tightly at home that you couldn't let it go when you got to school.
No, I mean, it was like, you're threatening me. There's no way that you're going to beat me the way that I get beat at home. That's not happening. So we're not waiting till lunchtime. We're doing it right now. Because the thing is, if you wait till lunchtime and you have an altercation in the morning, you're angry in the morning and you're like, yeah, watch lunchtime, we're going to have it, right? Yeah. And then, a few hours pass and then you're not angry anymore, and then you're just
still got to have a fight.
You still got to have a fight, and then you're just running through your head all the possibilities of things that might happen and shit. And I just couldn't deal with that anxiety.
Sure.
So I would just do it there and then, and that was the problem. Because the teachers would be like, look, you're bright enough to know that when we warn you that you're going to do this again, and we say we're going to put you on report, you're bright enough to know what you're doing. Therefore, every time you do it, you're making us look stupid. And there's only so many times we can allow that, because there was other kids that I saw in the school that were much worse than me. And I used to say, he's much worse than me. That kid that keeps on throwing the basketball at the maths room and smashing the windows. Like, I don't do that. Yeah. And but there's something wrong with him.
We're not looking out for him. They would say, we're not looking out for him. We're not making allowances for him. We're making allowances for you, and you're throwing them back in our face.
Well, I'd say it was more that they looked at it as some of the kids wasn't intelligent enough to understand actually the trouble they was in, and therefore it was kind of pointless. But with me, it's like, we know you're bright and we know you understand what we're doing for you here.
Yeah.
And it was my head of year, Mr. Burgess, that actually said to me in year 10, he said, look, if the school expels you in year 10, then actually the 100% of students in year 11, there'll be less students, but those less students will make up the 100%.
Right.
Now, if we get rid of all the troublemakers in year 10, that's going to make us look good in the school leagues, right? Because it means that the percentage of kids that are passing their GCSEs is going to be greater.
Sure.
Because you've got less kids. And he said, Ben, this shit is political, and I'm telling you, I don't want you to get expelled, but they will expel you, and you're at that point where there's going to be no more allowances, because there's political figures within this school that are actively looking for people like you to expel.
And you painted a target on your back for them.
Yeah. My circumstance did. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a bit about that, because your dad left when you were a baby.
No, I wasn't a baby, no.
Okay.
No,
I was 5 months old.
Yeah,
Well, it's your life.
Did someone give you the bio?
My notes.
No, because I read that today, actually. I read that in a bio.
Well, they must have got it from the same place.
Oh, right, yeah. No, because
I did it myself. It's not. Your father walked out when you were 5 months old, but hung around until you were 6. Is what I had read. So he was coming in. He was coming in and out of your life.
Because you know what? Someone done a bio today, and it said Dad disappeared when he was 5 months, and I was like, no, he didn't. And then you just said it, and I thought,
what's going on?
Completely incorrect.
It's like an alternative reality.
I think my mum and dad split up, probably.
Yeah, okay.
But my dad was in my life. It's hazy when he left. It would have been between 5 and 7, I think, that he left. And I've got an older sister who's 2 school years older than me, but she's only just over a year older than me. So it's a bit hazy as to how old.
Sure.
Which, whether it was 6 or 7, but around that period of time, yeah, he left.
And do you remember him being there and then suddenly not being there anymore?
Yeah.
It's tough for a boy, particularly.
I was talking about it today, I think in hindsight it's tough.
Yeah.
When, you go through puberty, or you want to learn how to drive a car, or you're the kid at school that doesn't know how to play football because you didn't have a dad who kind of got you into football. That you can have social problems, growing up. But I wasn't aware of them, really, when I was younger. And I didn't really feel like there was a void. Although there obviously was a void in my life, I didn't feel like there was, because actually my experience with my own biological father was quite negative. And I look back at it now, and I thank God that he wasn't in my life. I think it was the best thing for me. And I think if he would have been in my life, it would have been, my life would have been even more complicated than it was. So although I agree that I think that kids need their fathers, I think in my situation, I think it was probably for the best that he wasn't around.
Although, when you mentioned why things were so tough when you were in year 10, it was because your mum by then had a relationship with someone who was a very unhealthy influence. This is you rapped about on the first album on the track "Mama Loves a Crackhead."
Oh no, sorry, yeah. So that's not who I'm talking about.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're talking about your dad.
No. Sorry, no. And I just need to fill in some gaps. So,
This is your fault for putting so much of your life on record. You know.
So Mama Loves a Crackhead is the relationship that my mum had with someone after my stepfather.
Yes. Oh, okay. So
the negative.
So there's three. There's the biological, the step, and then
and the thing is, like you said, I put a lot of my life on record. And now the consequence of that is that now, like, we have to talk about it quite publicly, and it is it's difficult not to, yeah. Sure. And I think that I've made peace with my stepdad. He's still in my life. He's still in the rest of my family's life, and no one's gonna try and sweep anything under the carpet here. When I became a man, he came up to me and he apologized for what he'd put me in and my family through when we was younger. But the point is that when I'm looking at my own self and my own actions, I have to take responsibility, yes, for what I did, but I also have to look at the reason behind why I was behaving that way.
Yes.
And especially now that I'm working with kids, in my PRU, because the kids that we're working with are all coming from similar home environments, where those home environments are making it impossible for them to learn.
So violence was normal for you at home at that point?
Yeah.
Violence towards you and towards your mum?
Yeah, like, look, I don't really want to talk about the rest of the members of the family, because that's for them, if Absolutely. They want to talk about for that. Sure. So I don't really want to delve into that. But yeah, there was violence in my household, and I think the violence that I experienced from a young age definitely put me in a disposition when I was then going to a comprehensive school with other children, and having to deal with bullies and etc. It affected those things, which is why when I went to the PRU, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
For people who don't know, I should say that's a pupil referral unit.
Yeah.
So after you get expelled, these are the places that potentially they can be problematical, because lots of kids who've been slung out of school end up in the same place. So it's almost like a petri dish for misbehaviour, but some people get lucky, and you were one of the people who got lucky.
I don't know, man. I don't see it that way.
Go on.
I see it this way. Those kids should have been in that school from the start.
Right.
Those kids were always going to end up in that school, and therefore we should recognise who those kids are in comprehensive and take them out before they do damage to the school and the other students, and before we run out of time to help fix them. And
that is why you've got involved.
Yeah. Definitely, because it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and the best thing that happened to a lot of kids. But
so there's two things here. Sorry to interrupt you, Ben, because you've got people who should be in a PRU because of the life around them that has infected them in a way. It's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Influenced them. Yeah. And then you've got
products of our environment, man.
Bingo. So. And then you've got other kids who might have ADHD or something like that, which meant that they could never fit into a proper school environment. And you could pretty much, by year 9 or 10, you'd be able to point at the ones that should have been in a PRU. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the great thing about PRU is you're basically, it's when I was there was a heavy emphasis on vocational subjects. So basically anything that would give a child instant gratification, where they could basically, instantly succeed at something and be showered with praise for it.
First time for some of them.
Well, like music, for instance.
Yes.
And when we got the music room at the school, some of the kids will get into it. You come in there, a kid who you'd never expect to be playing bass guitar will be playing bass guitar, yeah? I remember walking in when I was there. I walked in and there was a girl in a burqa playing drums, and she was sick. And I'd come in with my guitar and I'd teach everyone my songs. And Cliff, the music teacher, he'd be playing bass, I'd be playing guitar and singing, and she would be on drums. And I have no idea what her name is or what she looks like. It didn't matter. It wasn't about that. It was just come in, she played drums, I done my thing, and it was beautiful. Now, when I put the music room at the school, because Cliff passed away and he was never properly replaced, I'd done a BBC Three documentary there. And afterwards, I got help from my record label and a big music fund, and we put a music studio in there. And so, and a full-time music teacher, who I've continued to pay for. And so when I would go into the school, I'd come in and some of the kids would be playing on instruments and getting on with it, and then you just have another kid in the corner. And so I would always go to the kid in the corner that wasn't engaging, and I'd say, why aren't you playing anything? It's like, I don't want to play anything. I said, don't you like music? Yeah, I like music, because everybody likes music, right? And I'm like, well, why don't you play something? He's like, no, I can't. I said, come over here, man, just sit on the drums, take these sticks. Or check this. And I'd show them a little thing on the drums. Not that I'm a good drummer at all, but, I can kind of get about. And then I say, now you do it. And some of these kids, they're going into that situation just believing that they cannot do it.
Yeah.
And then they try it, and they got rhythm, they're keeping in time, they got coordination, and they're doing it. And instantly, you can see the look on their face. They're like, this is great, right? And it is great, therefore you're telling them it's great, so it's not like you're lying. So they're getting instant gratification and praise. And for a lot of these kids, that's the first time they've ever experienced that. So can you imagine that they want to feel that again?
Yes.
So the next day when they come in, straight on the drum kit, on the sticks, hey, sir, teach me something else. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. They get infused, and it becomes, the music becomes like a therapy. Once you do that, you've broken down a barrier now. You've built a kind of trust. Now you can start saying, all right, listen, we know you love the drums, know you like music, and you're excelling in that department. What's happening with maths? Oh, I just don't like it. It's too difficult. I can't do it, and I don't like the teacher. Before, you'd say, what's going on with maths? And you'd just be met with silence.
Okay.
There ain't nothing coming out of them. But because what the music's done is unlocked them, and now at least they're being honest. And I don't like the teacher. I find it too hard. I've always hated it. Or in English, why aren't you doing the work in English? I can't read.
Wow.
Nobody knows I can't read. And at my age, I should read. So when the teacher's asking me to read something from a textbook, she's basically putting me up there in front of everybody so they can laugh at me when they find out I can't read. So I pick up the chair and I throw it at the teacher and I get chucked out of the class. I'm like, okay, cool, I get that. Yeah. So what you need is some one-on-one learning. You need a tutor. Let me speak to the head teacher. Let me fill her in on what's going on. And let's try and work that out. And it can be between us and nobody else needs to know about it.
It's fascinating.
And yeah, and it's as simple as that.
Well, you say that, and clearly it is simple, but it needs people to explain it, because the temptation is when you read about music being in PRUs and things like that. You don't even have to be right wing, I don't think, to think, well, what use is that because only 1 in a million is going to make it as a recording artist. Yeah. What's the point in spending your time making music? But you've just made that crystal clear. Yeah. And there's two things that came across while you were talking. I don't know if it applies to you, but it certainly applies to the children you were talking about, is that for the first time they feel that they belong somewhere, or at least
they're worth something, or they've achieved something. Yeah. And it's like, look what you've done on the drums. If you worked hard at maths, then you could achieve in maths. Like, really? Yeah. Whatever you put your mind to, bro. Look, you're a natural on the drums. And you might find the maths hard, but you're not an idiot. I've seen your work, and I'm talking from a fictional teacher's perspective.
Of course.
But this is the way you deal with the kids. Is you go, look, I can see, you're not that bad at reading, you're not that bad at maths, but you're a brilliant drummer. So if you apply that same energy, you can achieve, you can pass your GCSEs, and that's how you do it. Since we put the music room in there, we had 25% of kids being enrolled back into mainstream education.
Yeah, I saw that.
And we asked, what was it before? We said, what was it before that? And they said, it never happened. We don't know. I don't think there ever was a percentage because it just never used to happen. You know what I mean? So
I do.
We proved that what we're doing worked. And what's really sad is that, you know, it hasn't really made a difference. It's not like some magical funding has come out from anywhere to help us kind of replicate it in another school, or to even give that school really the money they need to operate even better than they did with the inclusion of us. And in fact, it's been even worse,
hasn't it?
It's got worse. They just cut more and more funding. And the problem is, if the school is made up of kids that basically don't respond to academics or can't engage with academics, it means that really the only value or way of helping these kids is through vocations. But when the budget gets cut, it's always the vocations that go, because if you cut the academics, it's not a school anymore.
Sure.
And that's the sad thing, is that the government don't recognise that. And ultimately, it's these kids that will go on to be the problems in society.
Because they never will have felt as if they have anything to contribute, or as if they fit anywhere.
Yeah, and because of that and the environments they're already in, they're going to see the easiest way to make money is through criminal means. And therefore, you know, you're going to have, you know, the next set of criminal minds on your hands that have never been shown any kind of love or compassion, and they are going to be ruthless, and society's going to have to deal with that. I mean, I think with, like, you know, all those acid attacks that was going on, I mean, I couldn't believe that was happening in London. That used to be a legend that happened in Jamaica. You know, if you go to Jamaica, you get acid thrown in your face. I had a Jamaican friend that said, man, that is just not true. Like, yeah, it's happened, but that's just not true. And then suddenly it was happening in London. For me, that's like, that shows you, you know, a degraded moral system within these kids that has been left to get worse and worse and worse, and to the point where they think it's okay, or they're comfortable with spraying acid in somebody's face, somebody who's done nothing wrong to them, just so that they can get their motorbike. Yeah. It's
also
and for me, that, you know, when I'm talking about stuff like I'm talking about in all manners, and people was all up in arms, you know, about the fact that I was talking about that, or they seemed to think maybe I was glamorizing it.
You mean critics now?
I just think, like you know, right-wing people that would see me aligning myself with that way of thinking, as in I was condoning it or something.
Simply, you know, by describing it, you must be somehow defending it, which is a fairly stupid position, but it sells papers.
Or kind of, glamorizing it.
Yeah.
I think because people took that stance, they decided to just ignore what I was saying. And because society ignores it, it gets worse. And it gets so bad that now the kids, their morals are so degraded that now they're throwing acid in each other's faces.
But it's about self-regard as well, isn't it? It's not. It's because obviously this is an alien world to me. But when, as a phone-in host, when we talk about knife crime, and people who actually know what they're talking about ring me, rather than people who just ring up and say, "Oh, I was a teddy boy in the 1950s. I used to carry a knife." I'll tell you, it's about how much you value yourself. If you don't value yourself, you're going to be able to look at other people's existences as lacking value as well. And that's where the PRU comes back into it, because what you're giving to these young people is a sense of value, a sense of
it's the Maslow pyramid of needs.
It is, exactly that.
And like, you know, like the most basic ones aren't being met.
Yeah.
Food, shelter,
warmth. Yeah.
Like, they're not being met. You know what I mean? Then we're expecting these kids to
develop the other attributes. Do you think,
or even stay awake at school and pay attention, you know?
If they're hungry. Do you think now, for a 15-year-old, it's probably worse after 8 years of austerity and sundry other political developments? It's worse for a 15-year-old now than it was for 15-year-old you?
So my mate has got a 15-year-old son.
Go on.
My mate's from the street, and he's like, I don't want him going out. And I'm like, don't be stupid. I said, us going out in the environment that we grew up in is what shaped us. Yes. What do you mean? You can't be one of those parents. He goes, nah, man. He goes, it's different now. It's like kids will stab another kid for nothing now. You think I'm going to let him go out there and get acid thrown on his face for nothing because the kid wants his shoes or his bike. Nah, he's staying indoors and he's going to just... I'm happy with him playing online games. He's happy. I'm happy. You know, it makes me feel sick every time he walks out the door. I'm like, but you're from the street. Like, you must know that is also unhealthy, you know, for him.
For sure.
You know, he can't be living a closed existence like that. But I guess that says it all. You know, like...
That's the change.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in a place to say it's worse off. I guess the only way I would know is if I had a 15-year-old kid myself, or if I was a 15-year-old kid. You know, my kid's not at that age yet, so I'm kind of slightly out of touch, and I can't really, you know, put a definite answer on that. Is it worse or not? You know, I just know that that friends of mine who grew up from where I'm from and in the same environment are having reactions like that to what's going on. So, I mean, that kind of speaks volumes. And
Sure.
and yeah, it is really scary, but it's like one of them things that I've been saying has been allowed to fester for a good 30, 40 years. And then suddenly, like with the riots, it hit boiling point, you know, and everyone's kind of focusing on the fact that, you know, the riots were not about Mark Duggan. Essentially, they was about opportunists looting. And I'm like, yeah, because we live in a society that bombards young people with advertising saying, you need these shoes, otherwise you ain't relevant. You need this computer, otherwise you have no value and you ain't cutting edge. And you need this really expensive jacket and all these products here. And if you don't have it, you ain't got no status within this society. None of these advertisements are telling these kids how to attain these things in a legal way, or that they even need to attain it in a legal way. They're just saying you gotta have them. So these kids have an opportunity to get these things that society is telling them will give them value, then they will get it, and they will get it by any means. And the riots was their opportunity to do that. And what was sad about it is that I think, you know, the ringleaders anyway would have been kids that would have gone, you know, probably been in and out of PRUs. You know what I mean?
I do.
And it was like all the teachers that have been working to try and change the perception of kids that went to those kind of schools. Suddenly all those decades of work they've been doing there, you know, was completely damaged by the riots, to the point where, yeah, now we've got this government that is just like, you know, cutting the funds to those schools to the bone, you know?
And ill manners in that, against what you've just said, it becomes a protest song in the purest tradition of the word, doesn't it? I mean, it was a howl of outrage in a way about what had happened to the kind of young people that ended up in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it was, but it was also like, I felt like the best way of talking about it was in that tongue-in-cheek, kind of satirical, really extremely sarcastic manner that I did it, because it is laughable. It's laughable, the hypocrisy and contradictions and that we see everywhere. Yet, no matter how much these politicians get exposed, people still toe the line, and they still kind of, you know, continue to live with these blinkers, and they don't allow their minds to be open to an alternative to the way they've been thinking all these years. And that's something that I think the way I tackle it is just, I'm not going to change you guys, but I'm going to change your kids.
Let's rattle through the chronology to bring us up to 2011, 2012, and then the 6-year gap to the new album. So you played your song to Cliff at the PRU. Cliff phoned his mate at the recording studio.
Yeah.
You had a manager by tea time. Had you thought before that day that you might make a career out of music? Had it been?
Yeah. No, I did. So my dad was a musician.
He was a punk musician, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in a band called the Warm Jets. But there was a Warm Jets that came after them, so they were the first Warm Jets.
Right.
And then he was in a band called The Pope. And in that band, he was with Joe Fadil. And he was with the bass player from Cockney Rebel, who died in a Lockerbie air crash.
I didn't know that.
And a guy called Dave Hamill, who's the drummer, who spent many years working for Waltham Forest Council before he passed away. They was all in a band together, and
so you knew it was a viable career. You knew that.
The thing is, it was like a legend,
right?
Because by the time I was born, that weren't going on, and my dad had found faith and became like what I call a fanatical Christian. Yeah. And the music part of it just was not in the picture. And when my dad left. As I started getting older, my mum would tell me these legends of how she met my dad and how he was in this band. And my godfather would also. And so would Joe.
Very close to your godfather,
aren't you? Yeah. And Joe Fadil was my godfather's best mate.
Right.
And he would also tell me the stories. I'm like, really? My dad? The fat geezer with a beard who won't stop reading out the Bible. Like, he was in a punk band. Like, yeah, he was really good. He used to have the audience eating out the palm of his hand. Oh, their music was 20 years ahead of his time. You know, all this stuff, right? So I was just kind of told by my godfather, like, music's in your blood.
Okay.
Therefore, you're a musician by default.
And you never questioned it?
Never questioned it. I was like, that's something I can do then. And it was mad because it's ironic. Not that my godfather probably would have known at the time he was saying that stuff to me that I would become a musician. But yeah, I just so happened to be able to sing and had a way with words. And
when did you realise you had a way with words?
So E17, pretty big, and we was from E7. Right. And so the kids at my school started their own little boy band called E7. And I said, let me be in it. They went, nah, we've got too many members. I was like, oh, what? I was like, all right, let me write the songs. I went, yeah, all right, you write the songs. So I took it like proper seriously and I went home and like wrote a song. Brought it to school. And he was like, do you know, that's quite good. But obviously, they never actually formed the band.
Sure,
nothing ever happened. They never had one rehearsal or nothing like that. But that was when I kind of knew, like I can write.
So nothing in the classroom then? No, there was never a moment where.
I think there was creative writing.
Right.
Yeah, creative writing, telling stories. I was always kind of into that and good at it, you know.
So how quickly after getting a manager did you start making money out of music?
Money. I mean, you know, they give you an advance when you sign.
So you got a record deal quite quickly.
Yeah, I got a record deal, and then I got 30 grand for my records and 30 grand for publishing, so 60 grand in total. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, so I continued to live at my mum's because it wasn't like, if I would have moved out, that money would have just gone. And I didn't do nothing stupid. I didn't go and buy a new car.
Why not? What do you think? What was it? Because
60 grand is just not enough. Like, and I wanted to make the record correctly.
Yeah.
And within the first 6 months, I knew it was going to be a long period because the A&R man just kept on putting me with all the wrong producers.
Right.
You know, and he wasted a lot of the record label's money, and it just, it got to the point with that album. It took me 3 years to make that album.
They must have been running out of patience by the end of it. Or not?
Well, I guess it got to a point where it was like, look, in the next 6 months, you need to have a record out. And I just said, all right, cool, I'm going to do it myself. I already had like assembled a small band and I'd met some good engineers. And I said, I'm just going to do it myself. Which I think when I listen back to the first record, like musically, it really isn't doing anything that special at all. Like, it's such a naive record, like musically, but the lyrics were so on point. And I always feel like that held it back, that it didn't have like a proper kind of hip-hop producer producing it. It was just kind of me doing it, and like I was learning that as I was going.
But that's probably what got you noticed, isn't it? If it had been a really slick production, the lyrics notwithstanding, it would have sounded a bit more like other stuff.
I don't know, or if I just done it all acoustic, like how I first started.
Yeah.
I first started just playing acoustically and rapping over the top. But what was the question you asked before that? Because I went off piste and I was going to answer that.
It was about how quickly you started making money, how quickly you realised this was going to be a career.
Right,
then
yeah.
we talked. So I've got the answer to that.
That was it. It was like I knew after 6 months I had to make that 60 grand last over like a long period of time.
Right.
So I made sure I wasn't frivolous. Like I didn't go and just splash it on like a new car or just stupid expensive things. And that's the best advice I could ever give to any young artist who signs their first record deal. Like, don't do that.
Because there's a temptation to think, this is it, I'm over the line.
Oh yeah, but that's the thing is, then you're F. The minute you do that, you're F, because you ain't made it.
Sure.
You got your foot in the door. That's it. You ain't made it till you put a record out and then the record's successful. And I see so many young people like
who think they're over the line
and
when
they go that way,
started.
and it's really sad, man.
So the record came out. You did well. I can't believe we've been talking for 45 minutes. I'm going to have to hit fast forward now to get up to date. When did you feel that you'd made it then?
Well, I was very depressed after the first record.
Why?
Well, because I went into the first record thinking I did not compromise,
Yeah.
Like when they wanted me to take certain swear words out, oh, can you not say the word cunt? I'm like, nope, I'm saying that word. I'm staying true. This is how I talk. Blah blah blah. I did not compromise, and that made it very difficult for the record label to put singles out. And I personally feel they should have embraced that kind of punk ethic and energy I was coming with, and we should have just put out some really raw ass videos to go with the raw songs. And they kind of didn't do that. They'd done the whole kind of pop thing with Mama Loves a Crackhead, and they kind of turned my whole life into a soap, with the video.
You could see it happening, and there was nothing you could do.
Oh man, I was in the video, and
but look how much control you were exercising over everything else. It's taken you 3 years. You've said no to that producer, no to that producer, no to that producer. You deliver the album, and somehow it slips out of your grasp.
Yeah, because it was I'd never done a music. Well, I mean, I had done a music video, but I'd done that stop frame.
Right. Yeah.
Music video, no good. But then this was the big one that they was gonna do for the big single.
Budget, production values.
So they put me with this director, and then we directed the video, or she directed the video. And I just the whole thing, like, I went into it thinking, oh yeah, we're gonna dramatize my life.
Yeah.
That'll be all right. And then it was just really soapy, man.
Yeah.
It was like, and I was whatever. You get good videos, you have bad videos. I don't want to diss anyone. Like, I'm not here to disrespect anyone. Like,
sure.
She's a good director. It's not about that. It's just that the way in which the record came out, it was like the album dropped and then the single came out. Yeah. And then I was judged on the success or non-success of the single, when really all the single did was it helped boost the record sales on that week. And even I could see that, and I hadn't been in the music business that long. But suddenly I was judged. So they spent 60 grand on that video, and then the next video they gave me 4 grand or something like that.
Really?
I'm like, you lot are taking the piss. So then we done No More Eating. We done a No More Eating video where I had to go and do a live version of it for the video for some reason.
Yeah.
And then when that didn't really kick off, they was like, yeah, album's done, move on to the next one. And I'm like, what? I said, we haven't done a video for kids. We haven't done a video for Charmaine, for any of these things. Like, it's not going to happen, mate. Album's dead. Accept it. Move on. Write something else. I was just so, like, gutted. So depressed for so long. And they'd taken my focus away from the reason why I was doing what I was doing, which was to speak for the marginalised youth, the ones that society looks at and writes off. I wanted to speak for them. So I wanted to make music that when first listened sounds like a kind of disgusting hip-hop music you don't want your kids listening to. That was to hook you in, right? Outrage you so that I get you listening. And once I got you listening, then get conscious on you, which I felt like the first album did. And the point was really to do that as well, to try and change some opinions. But mostly it was to talk for those kids that didn't have a voice. And that focus changed somewhere down the line, and it became about selling records. Yeah. And it was definitely the label at the time that put the emphasis on that. And about 3 years later, I came back to East Coast Studios off Kensal Road in West London, and the guy who runs it there, Philip, he went, Ben, I got this letter for you. I've had it for about 3 years. I opened it because I just had to open it because it's just sitting there. You've got to read it. And I read this letter, and it was from a kid in Feltham. He said, your album got me through Feltham, and it's hard in here, you know. But there was times when, you know, you hear the stories about young offenders, someone's giving you some shit, you know, the violence that happens in there. He's talking in this letter about there was times when I felt like I could have caused somebody else harm because I was being threatened. But I listened to your music, and I don't know, something about the music just made me find a different solution to my problem. And I want to thank you so much for that. And on the back, he drew a picture of, like, I guess it was him smoking a spliff. And there was spelling mistakes in it and all that. And it was beautiful. Yeah. It was beautiful. And I suddenly realized everything I set out to achieve on that record, I did it. And then I let go. All that anxiety, all that depression, all that them bad feelings that I was feeling about the non-commercial success of my first record just went. And I was like a new person, and I was embarking on Strickland Banks by that point. Yeah. You know?
Which has a depth and a confidence to it that you wouldn't have had if you'd stayed in that dark place.
But as well, it was like that dark place also created Strickland Banks because it was like, what do I write about now? I've been experiencing like minor fame. I've been taken out of my environment. I've been put in this new environment, which is basically worse than school because everyone's writing about you and criticising you, and you can't even catch up with them to slap them up. You know what I mean? In school playground, you can do that. In this world, you can't. And also, if you bring the playground rules to the music industry, no one's going to want to work with you. They don't want to work with aggressive people that hit them. You know what I mean?
That's probably true.
Yeah, so I had to adapt to that whole kind of thing, and I thought, what do I write about now? Because all I've experienced is like minor fame, you know, being the first guy and the first slot at the festival where the shit is, you know, dressing room and no rider, and went up there on the train and all that, you know, and just seeing all these wankers, you know, getting like armies of people following them around, licking their ass, and they're not even that good, you know. And I thought, that's been my experience. And I thought, you know, it must be hard for some of these guys, though, because you've got all these yes men around you, and it must be difficult to see the wood through the trees. And then I just thought, I've got all these soul songs I've been writing. I thought I'll take a little break from hip-hop and I'll just write some soul music. And I always wanted the next album to be like one big story, like a film. Yeah. I thought, why don't you do an album about a soul singer, right, who's a proper arsehole, right? And he gets wrongly convicted of a crime he didn't commit, and he just has to deal with all the shit that he's basically created because he's such an arsehole. And it was basically because I was in that environment, but I wasn't one of those arseholes yet. Sure. That I was able to perceive it from that point of view, and then that's how Strickland Banks was created.
Could you have been one? Could you have been one?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Not everybody is susceptible to that. Nobody is immune. And it's one of the things that I, you know, when I think about like Justin Bieber and stuff, like how, you know that there was a period where he was acting out. Yes. I thought, well, obviously, like from a young kid, the guy's just kind of been in that environment, you know what I mean? And now he's turning into a teenager, and he's just got kind of cameras and all around him, and everybody just putting a microscope on the way he's living. Let him be a teenager. Let him make some mistakes. Let him act like an arsehole. Like, we all kind of have to do it. So I feel...
But we all need one person in our life who can tell us. And I guess what the world you're describing, they don't have anyone. There's no one that ever tells them that they're being...
What, going back to like the PRU?
No, just anywhere in life, whether you're an artist or whether you're just living a normal life. If you've got no one in your life that tells you when you're being an arsehole...
There is
there's no break.
A relation. There's a relation to like the environment that the kids grow up in and fame. Because when you become famous, like, there's no hotline you can call where someone's going to pick up the other end of the phone and go, I know exactly how you feel, man. I went through the exact same thing. Because let's get it right.
Pull up a chair.
Yeah, if you're a celebrity, you're in the minority. When we talk about, like, the amount of people that live in this world, like, you are in the minority, and also when you complain about not being happy or not knowing what to do, people love it. They kind of want famous people to fall on their ass, and they'll say, like, stop crying, man. You've got everything you ever wanted. You wanted to be on stage. You wanted to be center of attention. You wanted to be rich. Well, now you got it. Deal with it. Stop crying about it. And I think a lot of people in that situation feel like that. So they can't sit there and be honest. They got to put on this front.
Which makes everything worse.
Oh, man, yeah, because you put on the front and just to hide all the insecurities. And then you just come across arrogant, and then people hate you even more, and it's just abuse left, right, and centre. You know, if you get it wrong, yeah.
Two things then. We'll have to skip over the film because we're going to run out of time. But I listened to you talking about the first album, ending up pretty much thinking you have to do it yourself. Then I listened to you talking about the first video, or the video for Mama Loves a Crackhead, and not feeling that the planets had aligned for you, not feeling that had been too soapy. Because really, to have gone off and written and directed a feature film, I mean, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, where do you get that confidence from? Because it seems to me part of it comes from seeing the so-called professionals do it, watching them very, very, very closely, and concluding that it's not actually that difficult and you could do it yourself.
No. I knew it'd be difficult. That's the difference. When I found myself on a film set, I asked as many questions as I could. When the sound man came and he put a mic on me, and then he put a second mic, I said, "Why are you putting two mics?" He goes, "Because sometimes when you lot act, like, you rub your chest." So I put one there, which ain't going to be as good as that one, but in the cut, it gives the editor a second one to. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to remember that. That's good. I remember that. And then, you know, all throughout the set, I was just asking as many questions.
I didn't mean it was easy. I meant you ask these questions and you persuade yourself that you could do it.
No, I know what you're saying. Like, I don't think I ever looked at it and thought it was going to be easy, but the reason why I felt like it was something I could do was really down to people telling me I couldn't do it.
Right.
Some people are built differently. If you tell someone they're not good at something and they'll never be good, there's quite a lot of people, that's like really the wrong approach. If you're using it as a way of getting someone to do something because you think it's going to pep them up and put some fire in their belly, there's a lot of people that doesn't work with, and it has the reverse effect, and it actually makes them crumble. I'm not that person. The more someone tells me I can't do something, the more I want to prove them wrong, you know?
Well, you did. Will you do more of that?
Yeah, but it's got to be right. I think that story was right. It was the right story.
The timing was...
Yeah, and like, just like my whole life, living in Forest Gate, my experiences with my friends. I lost a lot of friends to heroin and crack. You know, I don't mean in the sense that they're dead.
They're just not
I mean, they're just not there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like the stuff like, especially the chicken shop scene in Ill Manners, like, that's true. That happened, man. Yeah. That, you know, obviously I dramatized it. I made it about like a drug dealer and his phone, but that was about as far as I dramatized it. Like, you know, that actually happened. To a girl in Forest Gate, and I just remember because I knew the people that did it, and it's not, they didn't force her to do it. You gotta understand, you know, she stole their phone, and this was her idea. But I remember me saying, "What was you doing while you was waiting outside them chicken shops? Like, what was you doing? What was you talking about?" I was like fascinated. So, you know, just chatting shit like we usually do, eating chicken. I said, "You was eating chicken out of them places?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man," I said, how much was the phone? It's like 30 quid. I said, I probably would have just left it, you know, bruv. Like, "No, man. She stole my phone, and everyone knows that's how she makes a living. So let's say she would have brought me back my money. I know she would have got her money that way. So I just waited outside until she done it." I was like, "Well, I get the way you're thinking, but personally, me, I mean, you know," and I just remembered that, like, I needed to put that in a film.
You can't force it, can you? You when you tell a story, whether it's on a film or in a song, or whether you're rapping,
you have conviction.
Yeah,
you've got to know what it is you're talking about. Yeah, otherwise you're going to fall on your face. Yeah.
Is that why there's been such a big gap before the new album? Then 6 years you've used the word spiritual. I know you don't mean it in a religious sense. Knowing what I now know about your dad, there's no doubt that you've had a...
I have a relationship with God. I'm just not I'm not religious, you know. And it is a spiritual album, and it was like the song that created the album is called Grateful, and that was because I thought I knew what that word meant, and I didn't, mate. Because when my daughter was born, and I'm waking up in the morning saying thank you to thin air. And I actually saying, who are you saying thank you to? I don't know, God, the universe, whoever, just thank you. I'm like, wow, that's gratitude. And I didn't really know what that was until now, but that's gratitude. And then I wrote Grateful, and then that informed the album. And then after that, I wrote the others. But then halfway between that, like with everything that started happening in the world, I actually thought, you know what? This album also needs to be political, because it's about the world I'm bringing this child up in, you know, and I need to address that. And I can't just have this record out, which is all about kind of love and good stuff, when all this bad stuff's happening, you know what I mean? It's just that doesn't feel right. The tone of that doesn't feel right. So songs like Guess Again happened, and the title track happened, and It's a War happened, and, you know, I don't know if you've heard all of them.
I haven't heard all of it, but when you talk about the title track, Heaven Before All Hell Breaks Loose, that's not a suggestion that you're going to mess it all up.
Oh, I think it's very, very realistic that is a possibility. Like I said, for me to be that arrogant, to say that I would be immune to making that kind of mistake would be setting myself up to fail. I think definitely that's a possibility. And it's also, everything I do is always a reminder to remind me that that's a possibility, you know? Me calling that album that is one of them things where, can you imagine if I did mess it up and I called my album that? You know what I mean? It'd be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. I don't think I could live with that. So it's like these things I create, they're also supposed to be deterrents for myself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, don't end up like your dad. Don't end up like your godfather and what he did to his own family situation. You know, and so I think it's one of those things, but it's also the world we're living in. It feels like we're on the cusp of something potentially really bad.
It does.
And we may look back, go, fuck, we don't know how good we had it.
What were we playing?
What was we complaining about? And I hope I'm wrong, you know. I don't want to be right just because I wrote an album with that title in it. I hope I'm wrong, but it just feels like that. And I think that's why I was gravitated to that moon image.
Sure.
Because it's kind of really interesting and really beautiful, but really scary as well, you know. But at the end of the day, it's just a painting, you know. So again, it's like I'm just trying to capture the mood of how I feel like I'm feeling and everybody else is feeling, but I really hope I'm not right about it.
Hello, I'm James O'Brien. Thank you for watching this episode of Unfiltered. Not only is there plenty more where that came from, but there's plenty more to come as well. So make sure you subscribe to Unfiltered and put yourself at the front of the queue for all forthcoming interviews.